Next up, we have a fireside chat with Dr. Patrick Ahud and Sarah Scott Paul. So Dr. Patrick Ahud is a neurologist and the founder of CU Health. I've personally known Dr. Patrick for quite a few years now, and it's been really interesting how CU Health has evolved, because what I love about what CU Health do is that they create the how, because we're talking a lot about the importance of creating human-centered workplaces, and CU Health provide the opportunity for organizations to create more of a holistic approach to supporting people. And Sarah Scott Paul is an HR leader who is very passionate about helping people reach their full potential. She believes that when people grow, organizations thrive, and is dedicated to creating cultures of feedback, growth, and psychological safety. Please welcome Dr. Patrick Ahud and Sarah Scott Paul. Thank you.
Right. Yeah, after you. So we've got a dance prepared. No, we don't. Yeah, I didn't know were we okay down here? You can hear us anyway. Thank you so much for having us. Full disclosure, I deliberately didn't over-rehearse or rehearse at all with Sarah because authenticity matters, and I'm very interested in Sarah's spontaneous thoughts of things. We've known each other for a while, and so for the first few minutes, I'm going to give you a little bit of an overview of the work we've been doing at CU Health and the work that I've been doing independently over the years. I can see a lot of familiar faces in the audience, and then I'm going to ask Sarah a series of questions, bounce ideas around with respect to her work, working across many amazing organisations as a people and culture leader, and what you're currently doing and your experiences with different tools and strategies to solve a lot of the problems that Claire raised. I mean, you know, we sit here and we hear these things about engagement and what transforms or what wellbeing companies do, and the results of having a company that sort of indexes and prioritises wellbeing. It's very powerful stuff. If someone was if you know, Salesforce, as they were speaking up here, showing the incremental improvements that the company can have with their AI agents, you'd look at it and say, wow, that's a 40-50% improvement in productivity. That's huge, and for some reason, when we talk about it with wellbeing, it's sort of a little less cutting edge sounding, and I think that we've got to transition that to understanding that this wellbeing is the most powerful tool a business can implement in order to improve its performance, both at an individual level and at an organisation level. So, CU Health was founded a little while ago, in that we started the research and development around how to build a platform that can support every working person, no matter what type of work they're doing, whether it's in the field, in the office, whether it's manual work, or whether it's sitting behind a computer all day. My background as a neurologist has been one where I see patients every week, and I've worked in hospital systems and clinics and so forth, and I see people at their most vulnerable. Now, what became abundantly clear is there's this sort of persona that we have for work, which is our 9 to 5 or sometimes 7 till 7 persona, and we try and do our best work, and maybe the culture at the organisation you work with, whether it's a small business or a massive ASX listed company, maybe that is emptying your cup. It's not contributing to your well-being, it's detracting or subtracting from your well-being, and you spend most of your waking life, as Claire said, at work, so that's a significant impost on your health. People who then see me will come in and say, I've got migraines, and it takes 2 minutes before they tell me their sleep's not great. They're feeling flat, they're awake from 3 a.m. with anxiety, they've got kids that are snotty and they can't get them to daycare in time and get to their meetings, and they end up at their meetings and they're under pressure and they're not engaged with the work they're doing, and you hear all this stuff. So it became pretty clear to me as a physician that there was an opportunity to help people throughout their working lives and not have this sort of very siloed reactive world where you get on with your life and then you run into a brick wall and then you have lots of sick days and it impacts the economy, your families, your friends, your colleagues, and you start looking for somewhere else to work because work's not helping. So we built a platform to solve for that, to proactively and reactively help people throughout their working lives. And now I'll sort of segue into how Sarah and I met. We launched with a very advanced solution for employee wellbeing, and I didn't know about this space at all. I didn't know about organisational psychology and organisational wellbeing. I didn't know about employee assistance programs. I was coming at this from a evidence-based perspective. How do we improve the health of the country, the nation? How do we improve mental health rates, mental health scores? How do we improve access to good quality care? How do we bridge the gap between 1 in 2 Aussies having a chronic illness they take to work every day, whether it's a women's health issue, a missed cancer diagnosis, or a mental health issue? And it just so happened that our solution works well for that sort of thing, and it immediately uplifts a lot of the things that Claire was talking about. Through our platform, we tangibly demonstrate care, we improve people's capacity to focus, we improve capacities for people to connect with their work because they are doing better personally, and we also customise what we do to every person in a very efficient way so that you've got a solution. So Claire and I teamed up at one point to basically say this is the state of play in the world, and then how can we solve for that? So I was standing in a coffee line near home, and this lovely lady tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Pat," and I said, "Oh, hello." And I learned that Sarah had been working with some leading organisations that had implemented our solution, and I didn't know Sarah at all, and I was delighted to hear that the impact of our solution was having on businesses that she works with, and Sarah's entirely committed to, and that's why she's broken away to do her own thing, because has a wealth of knowledge both in large organisations and in leadership teams to get people as individuals and groups from here to here. But we all know that when you've got the Wellbeing Week, where there's about 42 meetings and you can't make half of them, and it's put on LinkedIn that your business cares about wellbeing, we know that for the rest of the year you're still a human being that needs practical support and emotional support, or whatever it might be. And so together it turns out that we can do something that helps sustain and improve wellbeing over time, which obviously leads to a high performing business. So there's a business case there, and that's the last point I'll make before I speak to Sarah, that whilst we all might nod our heads at these things, the data, the solutions and so forth, please always ground your thinking in terms of a business case for your organisation. It's the same way you submit a pre-budget submission to the government to have something changed, or you have a strategy meeting with the board. Unless it makes sense, I know that Claire said most of us make decisions with data, and we've got to, in defence of the shareholders, and also all the CFOs like to think that they're very data-driven, non-emotional people. But you've got to have in your mind, how is your wellbeing solution going to improve the bottom line? Whilst you know it's going to help every individual, that's nice. But until you can translate it into the data for the business, it's going to be hard to get big bucks on the table to solve this stuff. And the big bucks are nothing compared to the outcome. We all know that. That's why you're here. But you need to think that way to get it across the line. And we help a lot of people do that work. So now that's the end of my waffle. Sarah. So Sarah, I think we met indirectly through this summit at some point through Enero, an ASX listed advertising, marketing, creative agency that's sort of brought together a lot of businesses and does a lot of great work. Sarah, maybe start by just sharing your experience over the last decade or two and what's led you to the work you're doing now and what you hope for the future.
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, thank you. It's been such an honour to be here, because I've always sat in the audience at this summit, so to actually be up here feels like a full circle moment. Thrilled to be here, very grateful. But I guess probably to give a little bit of context and colour to it, is I think for me, I've learned firsthand through lived experience how important wellbeing is, but also the impact that leadership can have on well-being. And probably, if I cast my mind back to 13 years ago, I hit absolute rock bottom. I lost my husband in a really tragic accident. And probably the biggest impact that I had, I guess, in my rebuild or my recovery was the leaders that I had at the time, and also that inherited this widow that was incredibly crushed and probably, contemplating everything in my life. And it was how they made me feel. It wasn't just about outcomes and deliverables. It was, me going into a one-on-one, and I remember one of the leaders who is speaking today, probably doesn't want to be named, but used to start our one-on-ones by just saying, "How's Sarah?" And I just thought it was so human. It wasn't about, tell me everything that you've got done and whip mode, which I think we can do a lot of the time in the way that we're conducting ourselves. It's all focused on management, get stuff done. But the leadership impact, how are you? And we talked about well-being goals, and we talked about how I was feeling. And in relation to what Claire talked about, it was hope. And this belief, they believed in me more than I believed in myself, and gave me passion and purpose, and certainly was the biggest impact in my recovery. And so that lived experience, I guess, that I had firsthand, and I had great leaders, and I also had on the flip side, poor leadership. And I think that that's really enabled me over the last certainly 18 months to build a business where I now go in and very much focusing on how do I help leaders lead better. And that's very much about making people feel safe, seen and supported, and doing a lot of space in coaching. I'm a mental health first aid instructor, but certainly making sure that people can see the impact that wellbeing, if we feel good, we're going to perform better. And if leaders are feeling good, they show up better. And if organisations have a great wellbeing infrastructure of support and a great, and proactive, not just reactive when times are tough, then there's better outcomes around innovation, creativity, trust, and obviously then performance outcomes. So that's probably, giving a little bit of context to what I've been doing.
And so I guess that, the title here, How to Implement the Best Wellbeing Solution in the Era of AI, there's a how in there, and I think that that's often the missing piece. There's a lot of data, there's a lot of knowledge, so I think we'll move to that. I was fortunate enough to catch the ferry with Sarah this morning by fluke, and one of her friends was on there who's a director at Deloitte. And she works in the human capital division, and human capital is not a way we like to refer to our people. But I think that you have to understand that this is how organisations that are larger think about it. Think, how can we get the most out of the fewest people? All right? You got to think, how can we get the most out of the fewest people sustainably, maintain our reputation, improve our share price? Now, if it's a small business with 20 people, they're also thinking, how can we get the most out of our 20 people? And can we do it with 18? And so the reason I raise this is AI is sort of saturating our feeds, our social media feeds, our LinkedIn feeds, and conversations, strategic conversations in companies. What are the best tools? What the leaders are thinking is, how does this increase volume, and how does it make people redundant within the organisation so that we can have a higher efficiency organisation? Now, I'm going to ask everybody a question. Do you think that the rapid implementation of AI across organisations is improving well-being? No, not yet. Not yet. Shaking heads, not yet. Okay. So when people are introduced to new learning and rapid change, it's quite stressful. And AI, by definition, is dehumanising. It's artificial intelligence. So what we're seeing is organisations that don't have a very strong wellbeing strategy and wellbeing tools during this time will end up implementing all this AI and then falling over on the other side of implementation because their people are disengaged, flat and uncared for. So you end up offsetting all the gains with the AI with this poor wellbeing that Claire spoke about. So you've shot yourself in the foot. There's no win there. You just end up spending tons on recruitment and headaches with HR. And interpersonal conflict and disenfranchised people and that sort of thing. And then they'll get someone like Sarah in to fix it, and sort of the house is burning down. And you start with the leaders, because the number one, and this has been shown in a number of aggregated studies, the number one data metric that's important to the performance of an organisation is the well-being of its leaders. And what do we mean by that? The leaders need to be mentally stable, right? The leaders need to be mentally well slept, clear on their ideas, cohesive as a board or cohesive as a senior leadership team. If they're not, it all trickles down to chaos for the rest. So how to implement the best wellbeing solution in the era of AI is you can't have 4,000 conversations that are empathetic. You just can't. You can't do that. You can't be there for everybody all the time. But you need to have strong conversations with leaders, so that sets the platform. That sets the standard for what the rest of the organisation should be expected. And then you need to have great management support, where managers are cared for, because a lot of managers are just people who are really, really good at getting shit done, and they're very technically skilled, but they don't know how to manage people, and they're not counsellors. And then the rest of the organisation needs to have tools that they can reach into at any point in time, no matter what their needs are. It might be that they're going through a crisis where they've lost a relative, like Sarah, or it might be that they're going through a fertility challenge, or it might be that they've got a new diagnosis of diabetes, or their parent just got dementia, or any number of things personally. So how to implement it is from the top down, not the bottom up. It's to have a versatile, scalable solution. And I might ask Sarah, when you're speaking to leadership teams and you do workshops with them, what is it that you'd like to see all of them, and particularly the skeptics, believe by the end of your sessions? And what is it that you recommend that they have in place in 2025?
Yeah, it's a great question.
Yeah, including See Your Health.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I think that it's really about totally See Your Health, but I think it's about making it real for them. What's the impact? What's the consequence if we don't? I mean, I always look at engagement survey data first and foremost. I think that can tell us so much about what's going on and how people are feeling, and using that to go, okay, well, if we look at that in summation, like what's actually the biggest influence that we can have, and a lot of it comes down to management, a lot of it comes down to leadership. Everything trickles from that, our well-being and the great conversations that we're having, how much investment we're putting into growth. So I start always from a place that they get it, the data. What's the consequence and impact if we don't do this, and what are some solutions that we can do? And so I think that a lot of the investment is then about upskilling our leaders. We can see that there's vulnerabilities around leaders. A lot of leaders haven't been equipped. Gallup's provided some great research lately. I think it's under 50% of leaders have actually had technical training around what great leadership looks like. The difference between being a manager and a leader. And I think we've got great managers out there, but probably not leaders. And I think that's the difference. Certainly with AI coming in, it's about the human element. AI can't replace the human connection, the presence, how you make someone feel. What it can do is it can enable us to be more efficient and more effective. And then what I'm trying to, when I'm working with leaders is, what do we do then with the time that we can get from AI? Is about then making us be more intentional, more present with our team. So that's probably the biggest opportunity I see with AI.
It's a huge opportunity, and the temptation is to just fill the space with more efficiency.
Yeah.
But it's actually, again, shooting yourself in the foot. So I think that, Sarah said something really important there, that your people's well-being will be the differentiator. It will be the number one differentiator amongst your competitors. So it's not going to be about the best AI strategy, because everybody is going to be racing toward the most optimal solution. Whether it's agents, whether it's adopting cleverly the major AI players in the best way for your organisation, everybody's going to race toward that, because the unit economics and the way a business works means you're obliged to, as an organisation, head toward the most efficient solution, just logically. But it's the people, the way that they feel, the retention of your people, the loyalty of your people, the way that talent works together, and the way in which they're cared for within an organisation, that will literally be how the companies are ranked. And when Claire started her talk, she showed that these wellbeing indexes correlated with profitability within organisations. And so I can't stress this enough, because you're going to hear about a few different solutions and things like that, and what goes through everyone's mind is, this is great, how do I get it into my leadership team? I hope that you are decision makers in the room, in this space, or that you've got the kinds of decision makers back at your organisation that when you knock on their door and say, this is imperative, if we don't do this, the lead time is going to kill us, and we've got to be on the front foot. And you can then connect them with solutions easily, because no one wants a headache. They often just say, fine, fine, you're bothering me enough, just go and do it, sort it out. And that's what we really want to see. And we've certainly seen evolution in this time and space. So Sarah, I'll ask you the last part of this. Where do you see, like, you know, you're a person that has hope. You've lived as someone that has hope. It's sort of part of your core value system. It's part of your identity. Where do you see workplaces going over the next 10 years? Do you have hope? And are you seeing a change in the way in which leaders are making decisions around wellbeing?
Yeah, I have so much hope. I think that we can get, I think, you know, I'm reassured that even since COVID, you know, we're talking about mental health, we're normalising it. A lot of the conversations I'm having with leaders right now is challenging them around, you know, is thriving and struggle part of your everyday leadership language? You know, we've got to remove this kind of perfection myth and actually start normalising conversations around well-being, mental health, stress, overwhelm, and supporting our people. And I think that a lot of leaders and organisations are really noticing that. I'm reassured that I'm getting calls all the time saying we need a leadership solution. You know, can you come in and train our leaders? And they want the human leadership program. So I'm really reassured. I'm looking forward to it. What's next, especially in this age of AI.
That's great to hear, because you're right there all the time. And so the tomorrow, Sarah and I will be, I think they're basically sharing round tables with different people. We encourage you to come along because we can specifically talk about ways in which to solve and advance your wellbeing strategy within your different businesses and within your teams. My team's here, Sarah's here, please speak to her. She's had a lot of experience with us as well in terms of how leadership workshops and then an ongoing wellbeing support system. We're a wellbeing management system for your business. Can work together. My team's here, so we'd be delighted.
And they are the best. We've vetted them all. They are the best.
Finally,
yeah.
We got there. They should have started with that. Great to see everybody, and we'll see you over the next couple of days. Thanks, Lawrence.
Thank you so much. Thank you.